A hearty welcome. My name is Rainer Atzbach. I'm Associate Professor of Archaeology at the University of Aarhus, and I've been the pleasure to be your technical host now. Olha's presentation will take about 45 minutes, and I'll ask all the panelists to switch off their camera and to mute their microphone during Olha's presentation. And after these 45 minutes, there will be the possibility for discussion between the panelists, but of course, all the attendees are welcome to participate in asking questions, for example, in the chat, and it's also possible to promote attendee to a panelist that we also can see your face. We will publish this lecture as usual on YouTube. In a few minutes, I'll repost the links to our former lectures of our series Strongholds of the World 7. But please, if you as an attendee don't want to be a part of this published and broadcasted version on YouTube, send me an email. I'll write my mail address into the chat in a few minutes, and then it's possible to cut your comments out or to cut your part out of this. Yes, this is just for your information. And now I leave the floor to Niels Nørkjær Johansen, who's the director of our research program, Materials, Culture and Heritage, and a partner together with the Marburger Arbeitskreis für Burgenforschung, represented here by his chairman, Christian Ottersbach. So the floor is yours, Niels. Have a nice lecture.
Yes. Thank you very much, Rainer. I will just add a brief welcome on behalf of the research program and also to express my enthusiasm for this series. It's very nice to have this degree of coherence, of course, across a long time, but to have this thematic lecture series continue, I think it's very useful, also with a very flexible online format. So this is something that can supplement most of the seminars we do in our research program are traditional on-site colloquia, but this is of course much more accessible, and it's possible to maintain a longer-term coherence, thematic coherence. So I think it's a great initiative. I won't say much more other than welcome also on behalf of the department and the research program. I'm a specialist on the Neolithic, so I don't think I have as many substantial contributions to make in the respect to this particular lecture, but I very much look forward to learning more about the topic today. So for the thematic introduction and the introduction of today's speaker, I will hand over to Christian Ottersbach. Thank you.
Thank you, Niels. Yes, dear guests and friends of Strongholds around the world, a very warm welcome to all our spectators. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you in the name of the Department of Archaeology and Heritage Studies of Aarhus University and the Marburg Working Group for European Castle Research to the seventh part of our lecture series, Strongholds of the World. Our idea was to present a worldwide look on castles and fortifications, and mainly on non-European strongholds, opening the view on the phenomenon of fortified sites and their cultural background. Today we will visit the fascinating archipelago of Indonesia and the remains of its built colonial heritage. Well, I'm the first chairman of the Marburg Working Group, Christian Ottersbach. For all who don't know us shortly, our small society was founded at Marburg University in 1996 by, at that time, students and young academics of art history, history and archaeology. One of our members is Professor Rainer Atzbach, archaeologist, and I'm glad that we have with him a good connection and relationship to Aarhus University. Without its power, we couldn't have organized such an international virtual lecture series via Zoom. And by the way, I have not normally also to give my thanks in the name of our society to its chief, Niels Nørkjær Johansen, for the possibility to organize this lecture series in collaboration with Aarhus University and his kindly support. On our panelists today are also Catherine Atzbach. She will record our meeting, and also our second chairman, Dieter Lehmann, who has had the idea to the lecture series. Last but not least, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome our speaker, Olha Tikhonova, to our today's event, and I have to thank her that she has found time for us. Well, I might introduce Dr. Tikhonova to our spectators. Dr. Olha Tikhonova is an Ukrainian architectural historian and heritage specialist focused on early modern fortifications and their global afterlives. She holds a VD cum laude from the University of Lisbon in Portugal and an MA with honors from VII Polytechnic, Ukraine. She has received several European research awards, including 2 Mary Skłodowska-Curie fellowships. Her current project at the University of Seville examines colonial forts in the South China Sea, integrating archival research with digital tools and as LIDAR, drones, photogrammetry, and typomorphological analysis. Previously, at the Polish Academy of Sciences, she studied Jacques Perret's impact on Polish military architecture, and at the University of Porto in Portugal, she contributed to developing risk indicators for vulnerable heritage. She has held research positions in Portugal, Poland, Austria, and Spain, and has published widely in architectural history, conservation, and urban studies. Dr. Tikhonova is a member of ICOMOS Ukraine, Europa Nostra, Efforts, Forticultura, and the International Fortress Study Group, and I hope she will be soon a member of our society, MAB. I give now the word to Olha, and I'm very much looking forward to her lecture.
Thank you so much for introduction. It was very nice. I will now share the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yeah. Screen sharing is working.
Oh, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining to hear my talk, to see this presentation. I would like to start by saying just about a few words about, in general, about my project, because it's quite a recent project for me. I started 1 year ago, and before I was just looking into European fortifications. So for me, colonial fortifications in Indonesia was very new project. And that's why I started firstly from literature review, but I thought that it would be great to see a real situation, to go there and to make the trip exploratory journey, and to see these colonial forts firsthand, take touristic photographs, and immerse myself in the atmosphere. And it was not maybe very proper research at that time, but I would like to show you those photos, to make you connect with what I saw and what I felt during my research journey in Indonesia. It was 1 month to different forts. And I hope this experience of the sites and maybe this first-hand, from first person photos will give you some inspiration and knowledge about what is there, and maybe it make you curious to know more. And I think there is much more to be done in the future. It's just the beginning of the work. And recognizing this cross-culture situation, because we have colonial forts that belonged mostly to the Dutch colonial powers, but also there were present Spanish and Portuguese powers. And recognizing this cross-culture, we need to know to know how to represent this shared history. While the Dutch influence is undeniable, each place in Indonesia shapes its designs in its own way, creating something truly unique. And this uniqueness is because of the landscape, of materials, of people who were actually building it. And it's in that way my project began. I started to look for this special input. For example, if we talk about colonial forts, which are, of course, a precious architectural heritage because of their architectural and historical value, as much as evidence of military techniques, they should be important not only for locals, but also for European countries, because they actually built those forts there, and they initiate their construction. However, while several European countries see this period as a period of development, as a period of prosperity. For local colonial countries, this period is it's a start of colonial oppression. And to understand this question, the Netherlandish policymakers, they introduced the term mutual cultural heritage in 1990, and to label this Dutch heritage in former colonial lands. And this term can also be translated as a shared heritage or common heritage. However, the term underlines a shared view towards those fortifications, which still is not defined. And when we can say that it's possible to define it, some researchers, for example, researcher Partesius, underlines that he cannot see how fortifications in Indonesia can be seen as Indonesian and Dutch heritage simultaneously. And he's actually right, at least from the current perspective on the heritage, that is mostly concerns the history, and the history is really hard there. And we need to see, and we need to rewrite the history, but not like rewriting the facts, but underlying something that is valuable for locals. And I think that this valuable point is the landscape, because when I went there and I saw those fortifications, I thought that even if you take the fort from the Netherlands and you just take the fort, the whole fort, and rebuild it in the place in Indonesia, it will not be the same fort, because all that you see from all around, it's different. It's totally different landscapes that makes this object really special. But also in most of the forts, we have local materials introduced in the fortifications, and they are very, very unique, and I will try to show you during my presentation. So here is the main idea with which I decided to go to this, to introduce this project. I asked for European funding for Maria Skłodowska-Curie with the idea of this dissonant heritage. And I firstly selected 12 different sites. And then when I came to Indonesia, I saw more. And when you are already there, some of them are hidden, some of them you don't know in the literature, but you can find when you are already in the place, because for example, Indonesian archipelago has 442 forts, and only 126 are registered as heritage. So all others, they are hidden, deteriorating, and unknown. Here is the map from Atlas of Mutual Heritage, and here is in orange placed the points where are the forts, at least the known ones, but there are much more. So I decided to make this survey. It includes mostly the cases that I saw, and then I will present my typomorphological analysis, how I see them, how I define them as they are. So here is the Fort Rotterdam. It's a functioning fort. It's in Makassar, and you can see that it's one of the best preserved forts, because here is a model that is located in the museum. But if you go there, you see that actually all buildings are restored in good conditions. They are functioning, and they have very different functions. For example, you can see the exhibition room, the meeting hall, even office for cultural preservation in Makassar. And also there are some spaces that are open to creations, like different art classes and different art exhibitions. And in one of the buildings, you have a museum of local heritage. And this museum has representing different models. It's a wooden models of the heritage that you can see in this region. It's very unique. Here is the general photo of next to the entrance. And as you can see here, they are still under restoration works, but it's functioning. So you have a lot of visitors there. And this is another case. It's a Surosavan fort. It's without function. It's closed, and you have 3 forts in the area. So this one that I showed you is the biggest one, and it's really huge. It's 300 to 100 meters. And you have, it was built in 16th century, but in 17th century by Dutch, it was redefined. So you have bastions at each corner and half-round bastions like plataforma in the middle of the long wall. And here you see the main entrance to this fort. It's huge and it's a masonry. And then you can see the stones. Here is the area around. It was rehabilitated. So now it's a park, public park, that you can walk there and enjoy the time. And it's very, very beautiful and nice. Here there are some excavation works. And here you see the entrance to the fort. And this one is another fort. It's the island that I think I loved the most from all my visits. It has 2 forts in one place. The one that you see is Fort Nassau. Currently it's without function. Like, let's say it's without function, but for example, in the evening, boys are playing their football. So it has some small function. And so you have the lower forts, the one that is that you can see. The idea is that maybe it was built by Portuguese people, and then the Dutch came and reconstructed the fort. But some scholars still does not agree with that. They say that it's not enough evidence to say that. So they say that maybe it was the local fort and then it was reconstructed to the Dutch. So this question still needs a deeper research. And as you can see on the top, you have a mountain. And it was, they thought that it's not well protected when you have fort on the lower level, and then you have mountain from where the enemy can actually come if they will end up on another part of the island. So they built a second fort. Here is still the first one. It's a Fort Nassau. It's the inner place of Fort Nassau inside. And you can see there is a mountain there. It's after the river, the mountain. And here is fort from the outside, the Fort Nassau, and you can see the cows are laying down. So it's actually a closed fort, but you can ask the locals to open it. So and when there are lots of visitors coming with a big ship, they usually open it to visit too. But there is nothing inside, as you could saw. There is this was very interesting because it's a cannon of 17th century. It's a real cannon, and it's just laying down on the floor. And I saw in many castles this situation when in many forts because they don't think that it's a heritage, so it's just laying there. And in our case, you will see the replica in the museum, or if it's a real thing, it would be with the glass that don't touch. And there it's just laying down, so you can actually go around and take a better look what is there. So here is this fort on the same island that is on top of the previous one. It's a Fort Belgica. It's currently actually on a tentative list to be as a World Heritage because this island in general is very special. And as you can see, the fort is in good conditions, I would say. And the views from there are amazing. And this is the point that I tried to talk about at the beginning of my talk, that I think that landscape is a very unique feature in that case. It's authentic and unique. And I think this is the point that we can show to people why it's important that it's a shared heritage that has the value of a local and the value of European powers. Because although the model, the drawing is done by European powers, the landscape, the place is very, very unique. Here are some more views. It was during the sunset, and it's incredible place actually. And in the evening, the locals, they are sitting down on those terraces and just watch, see the sunset and talk and relax after a very active day, because they start day very early in the morning. Here is another fort on Banda Lontor. Banda Lontor, it's still in the group of Banda Islands. You can see that the first fort was with 2 bastions, but then the idea was to rebuild the fort into the square with 4 bastions. And actually, when they started to rebuild it, they found that it's like one building is already staying there, and they decided not to destroy the building. That's why it is not totally regular. You have just 3 bastions and something that is half, even not half bastion, and it's facing the waterfront. And you can see that currently it's in a deteriorating conditions without any function. Here is the entrance to this fort. And here is another fort also in the same area of Banda Islands. It's island, not far from Banda Naira, the one that was before. And here is Revenji Fort. It's without function. It's open to the public. And you can see that it's also in bad conditions. It's deteriorating, and because of the climate, it's deteriorating very, very fast, because you need to constantly at least to cut the grass, because it's growing very fast in these conditions. And as you can see, there are just some remains of the fort. Some walls are better, some worse. This is also used as a football field. And here is Banda Bazar. It's also in the group, another island next to the previous ones, and it's Fort Hollandia. Here you have left 2 bastions of the fort. And this is also fort it was from 17th century, but because of the earthquake, it was destroyed in 1743, and then it was rebuilt in 1796. And here you can see the conditions of the fort. It's in bad conditions as others, and it's very fragile material, so it's deteriorating very fast. And here is another fort. It's Haruko Islands. It's a little bit farther away from Banda Islands. It's more closer to Ambon. And here you see the fort. And it's me, the small one. So you see the difference between the 2007 and 2024. So if you don't cut the grass, it's become just something hidden that is even hard to find. But as you see, it's still without any function. So it's deteriorating, because even people are caring about it. As you can see, the grass is cut, but still it can disappear very fast. And here is on the same island, but from another side, you have another fort. It's a New Zealandia fort. It's also without function, if not to count that people are drying the clothes on the area. And And you can see the entrance there. I think maybe from previous photo it's better to tell that this is the wall line of the fort, and this part is almost destroyed, and this part and a little bit of this part. So as you can see, that's all that left from the fort. So this is the entrance, and what is, I think, unique, it's another point that is unique for this Indonesian colonial fort that I think we need to underline, that a material of those forts, something incredible, because it's a coral stones, and they are very impressive because each stone is quite unique with very unique texture. And I think it's a point that we should pick up and we should underline and say that it's important, it should be important also for locals to preserve this heritage based on these materials that is only unique to them. And here is the Durstedt Fort. It's a museum. When I visited it, it was under reconstruction, but you can visit it, so it's open. And they are trying to make the space better. They are restoring the different buildings inside. And here is the last two forts that I would like to show, and they are very, like, they weren't on my list when I was thinking about my trip first, but then I came to Surakarta to see one fort just because it was nearby. And then I noticed that because when I go to the places, I am a fortress lover, so I just write a fortress on the map in the Google and try to see what is nearby. And I saw that there is another fort nearby, and in Yogyakarta, and it's just 30 kilometers, if I remember well, that very, very, very near. And I went there too, just out of curiosity. And I saw that it's very similar forts, like the fort in Surakarta and the fort in Yogyakarta. And I tried to look on the map, and they are really very, very similar. And I was thought, two forts, one plan. Is it coincidence, deliberate design? Why they are so similar? So it became my question, and I started to try to define why they are actually so similar. So here you can see one of them. The difference between them that I noticed at the first glance is that the fort in Surakarta, it's closed. Inside you don't have anything now. It's not functioning generally. Sometimes it's open for big events or exhibitions. Then this space is used. When I was there, the next day there was some kind of event for children with different spaces for children. But in general, it's closed. And when I went to Yogyakarta, this fort is functioning. It's a museum, and it's restored and preserved, and each place, each building explains the history of the fort, the history of region. It's very active and very interesting fort. So my question was, is it just similar on the first look, or are they really like the same plans? Because it looked very, very similar. And what are the similarities? What is the role of these similarities? Where the design idea come from? Because for me, it was a bit like not unusual design, and especially it's very unusual design for the whole Indonesia, because these two are very similar between them, but they are unique considering to others. So what are the architectural and urban planning similarities? And I also, besides that, I went to Indonesia. I spent 1 month in the Netherlands, in the archives, and I studied the archives, trying to find different plans. And they actually have a very good archive. You can find a lot of different plans there. Not all that you would like, but it's really a good documentation, and it's in open access, so you can publish it, and it's in public domain. Here what I found a plan for Bastenburg in Surakarta and Fort Vredenburg in Yogyakarta. And from there, I started to go deeply into those plans. So as you can see in Yogyakarta, in the plan, you have century boxes at the corner of each bastion and in the corner of the bastion. And actually, I saw those century boxes also in the fortifications around the palace that is next to this fort. And but currently there is no century box there in the fort, but there are still in the palace. And if you compare Yogyakarta, so if you here you see the Yogyakarta today, the plan, and the plan how it was. And here is the plan of Surakarta, and you can see that it's actually more similar to the plan that in Surakarta than the plan of Yogyakarta as it was. And then I tried to do some architectural analysis. I tried to divide the plan to 4 different parts, and I tried to mirror it to see if it's a perfect design plan, that if you do the rotation, will it end up as it is? And in Fort Vastenburg in Surakarta, you have this ideal plan. So if you divide it, it's ideal geometric, let's say. And when you do it with the plan, archival plan of Yogyakarta, it's not perfect, because I tried firstly this rotation, 360 rotation. So I took one part and I made rotation. And as you can see here on the first plan, you see that it's not ending up at the same place as it is in the drawing. Then I also tried to do this, just like to take upper part and to mirror it down to the lower part, and it also doesn't fit perfectly. And then I tried also to do the same in the vertical line of the symmetry, and it's not totally symmetrical. My question was why it is not totally symmetrical, and I think that it's actually because maybe it was a draft, because it was earlier designed than the design for Surakarta. So I think it was just not made, and actually it was 100 years almost between the two plans. So I think that maybe architect was just not so carefully drawing it, or it was a draft. But there is no answer for that yet. It's just my interpretation. And then I tried to see how it looks, the difference between those two plans in the location, in the site plan, in the system of in urban system. And as you can see here in Yogyakarta fort, you have the fort, the square, and the keraton. Keraton is a palace. It's a sultanate palace. And the fort is from Wok. So keraton, it's a local ruler, and fort, it's a Dutch fort. And you see that it's Yogyakarta and Surakarta and the same location. So you have a fort, a square, and keraton. And my curiosity was why it's so similar, the design in space, and also the design in the plan, right? So here is the comparison of historical plan found in archives and what you have in Yogyakarta. and in Surakarta. So it's very similar. It's in the same scale. So you can see that it's actually almost the same plan. And if you compare it with what was built, you have almost the same plan. So my question is, were the similarities part of deliberate design strategy, or what, why and what? Because the rulers inside, at least in those two cities, are different rulers. And I started to look into this question, and I find out that it's, in my opinion, it was because of Gianti Treaty in 1755 that those two forts were built. As I can understood from, and I can interpret from the sources that I found, that firstly we had Mataram kingdom, and there was only one ruler, and the Dutch. And the Dutch were supporting this ruler. But then there was a fight between the rulers, and there was a question like how to stop the fight, and there was the decision to divide the Mataram Sultanate into like between two rulers. So the VOC was supporting, they thought that it's actually not a good idea to divide it, but then they support this question and they signed the treaty. And they say that they will put a fort in each place, in each place, in each city, in Yogyakarta and in Surakarta, and they will support in such way each sultanate, and they will support the sultanate in the same way. It is not written then that the forts should be ideally equal, but I think that they decided that it would be a good idea to put the same design to show that we are supporting in the same way, because if you put something different, then one of them can say maybe they're supporting me less than another. But it's just my interpretation, I think, but I think it's valuable. We can discuss it if you want later. And so they put those forts, and even the rulers were supporting, they wrote that they will support the construction of those forts. But the one in Yogyakarta was constructing slowly than the one in Surakarta, because the ruler was taking money more to construct his palace. And also there is written in the sources that he was hesitating, that the work has a good intention to protect him, and that if they will build a fort so close to the palace, it can be dangerous for the local ruler. So he was hesitating, and he was actually delaying the construction. Oh. So here is the plan. And the next part of my talk will be about the typology. So I make an analysis of what I saw to define what typologies we have there. And as you can see, one of the most popular typologies is a quadrangular bastioned fortification with a regular square plan. So you have Fort Concordia, Fort Nassau, Fort Hollandia, New Zealandia, Suraswan, and Orange. And then you have a lot of cases where it's quadrangular half bastions, at least in one part half bastion or fully half bastions in each point. It's in Fort Spilvik, Rotterdam, Nieuwhoorn, and Defensie. Also, there are like a lot of examples when you have just two bastions, and they are usually facing the line, the water line. And then you also have those when you have only from 2 points, the bastions, and it's usually on the places where the island is quite narrow, and you have this point, and you put they put the fort there, and all the forts are baroque. So here is another fort. It's a typology. It's pentagonal. It's more rare than others. You can see it in Fort Belgica and Fort Revengee. And if we will discuss the typology location in the landscape, because analyzing European cases, I found that there are several typologies, and I was trying to see if they are the same in the Indonesia. So here is the first typology when you have a castle, a fort, and a regular regular city, not fortified city. So here you see the first type 1, Fort Belgica and Fort Nassau. Actually, they are next to the regular city, regular town. And here is another type. It's a type when you have a citadel, and then you have fortifications around the city. And you have such situation in Fort Orange, in Ternate. So you can see that there is a fort. So here is the fort, and there is fortification around the town. And also you can see actually such such type you see in the capital in Jakarta, that was Batavia at that time. You also have a citadel castle, Kastel, written there, and then the fortified city. And here is another type. It's when you have a fortress and you have fortifications around the city. And it's actually in Makassar, in Rotterdam. You can see here the fort and the fortifications around the settlement. But the difference with the previous types that it's the fortifications are not directly connected to the fort, but there is some space between the fort and the fortifications. But this space is not huge, so it's not far away, but it's still near. Because in Europe, I saw the typology when you have a fort or a castle, bastioned castle, and then fortifications around the settlement that are a bit far away. But I couldn't find such in Indonesia. So here is another type when you have irregular settlement, and then you have a fort. And you can see this in, for example, in the Rosovan Fort, Spilvik, Fort Defensie. So you have a very unregular structure and the forts all around. And here is this. I introduced it when I was studying European castles. So I divided them for 2 structures. One is compound structure and one is integrated structure. Compound structure means that you have huge fortifications. Usually it's earth fortifications. And then you have scattered around, but inside of these fortifications, different buildings. And then you have integrated structure. It's when actually fortifications and the palace, they are like a one merged form. And usually in that case, it's a masonry or the stone. And I tried to see what is the typology in Indonesia, and it's actually the same typology. You have a compound structure and you have integrated structure. And here is the examples of compound structure. So it's Sorosovan Fort, Fort Orange, and Fort Makassar, Rotterdam in Makassar. And you have integrated structure. So it's Concordia, when you have connected bastions to this like residential part, and Fort Belgica. And Fort Nassau too, because you also have the residential part was connected to the fortifications. And as a future work is digitalization process. It's creating 3D models of those forts that I want to study. deeper, and I want to make them in open access, accessible to all people all around the world, because not everyone has the possibility to go there and to see these unique structures, and also making them accessible to study and to visit in that way. And the digitalization process that I use is it's a free software, so you can recreate the process and you can use the process. And I already tried on one case, and it's a Fort Belgica. Maybe you can recognize it. And I create a 3D model, and I create a puzzle of this 3D model. And how actually it's happened. When I was in Makassar, I saw many children that were visiting the fort, and many children were asking me, what are you doing here from so far? Why are you interested in forts? And I saw that children are actually very curious about our work, our idea of preservation. And I think that we need to give this idea, to give this knowledge to children and to inspire them and to make them involved in our work, because I think that alone we cannot preserve everything. But together with children who are curious, they can become guardians of their heritage. And if we will just give a small inspiration and knowledge how to do it, we can create a lot of guardians of heritage all around the world. And this idea came to my mind, and I created such a small pilot project, and I submitted for the grant from my European Union to have this possibility to show it to children. And there is every year in March, there is a science fair for children organized by European Commission. And there is 600 children that visit in this science fair during 2 days, and you can show your project and involve children into your project. So I created this puzzle, and I will show you. I'll just need to maybe. No. Oh. I will try maybe to have to. Okay. Oh, now it's working. So I created this puzzle, and I explained them that it's a fort and the elements of the fort, and they were trying to put it together. And I explained that as they can see, that it's fragile, like a puzzle. It's also the fragile in reality, and we need to preserve it. So what we decided to do, I showed them that you can actually easily do it using the iPad. I showed them how to make this 3D model with iPad, and I said that they can do it even for themselves, and they were doing it. They were digitalizing this puzzle, and after that I say that now you can preserve the fort. You have digitalized it, and you made it possible to see forever, and you are a guardian of the fort. And it was really like amazing part when you see the children are inspired. And I hope in such a way, by involving children, we can preserve our heritage better. So this is the end. Thank you so much for listening to the presentation.
Thank you very much, Olha.
Thank you, Olha. It was very interesting to see this many forms and types of forts. And I think I always want to have this toy. You showed that last for playing with fortresses. Yes, I think I will open the discussion. Perhaps there are some questions by the public.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with a question.
Okay.
Yeah. Who were the enemies these forts were built against? Also, what is the historical background for this huge concentration of forts in Indonesia?
Thank you for question. All the forts belonging to Dutch powers, and it's to protect from others, to say that it's their territory and the spices belong to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mostly all of them are located in the seafront.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to protect from the enemies, because firstly it was Portuguese power there, but the Dutch was more powerful during some time, so they showed their power there, and they put their forts to protect from others. At some point in Banda Neira, it's a very hard story, because when you go there, and I think it's even hard to say that it's heritage for them, the forts, because it's really Dutch forts. And in that, if you go there in the island, there is a local museum. And the first thing when you enter the fort, you see a huge picture where is where showed the fort and the massacre of the people, of the local people. It was at least by saying, like it's how it's written in the fort in the literature, that all people, all local people were killed in this fort. Why it was done? Because the Dutch wanted to have the power that that just they can have this maize and nutmeg spices, because this Banda Neira, it was a unique island with nutmeg, and it was it still is there, the nutmeg trees, and they wanted to have them just for to be unique owners or unique providers for Europe. And locals, and there was the thing that they just took the best nutmeg, and the worst nutmeg, it was stained. But what were doing the locals? They were trying to sell it to other powers, because they have it, like it's lower quality, but still. And to make it impossible, there was this massacre. So they killed the locals, and they bring slaves from other islands to sell this to do the work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But consequently, this will be some kind of dark heritage. So it's surprising for me that the local population of Indonesia protected and preserved these forts, and they didn't destroy it.
But as you see, most of them are in very bad conditions. But yeah, for example, when I talked to local people from Banda, I asked, do you want to be restored those forts? Do you want to be protected them? And they said, yes, because actually it's a thing that makes Dutch to come to our island, and because they want to see their heritage, and then in such ways the tourism are growing, and we're becoming a little bit more popular. And as long as it gives some money of the tourism money, we understand that it's important. But if you go to some islands that are not in the, let's say, tourist, the tourists are coming actually there, or it's far from the roads of the ships, then you have a very bad condition of the forts, because there was 442 forts registered, but in some cases, what I saw in one of the islands that are not so popular, that it's just stones, and on top on top of it, you have a lot of grown trees. And it's so hidden that to find them, I was asking locals, do you know about the forts that can be here? And they were saying, yes, we know, but no one goes there. But if you want, we can show you. And we were making those strange trips to the. It's not very actually. It's a bit dangerous because you have really a lot of trees there and different animals and everything. So. It's not a tourist way of seeing, but so the ones that you saw, it's actually in a better conditions because I seen more, but I don't know how to show them because you don't have historic evidence about them. But I found them with locals, but it's just the stones and everything grown, so you cannot even show the picture of it.
Thanks.
So I have also a question. I saw that there are at some of the fortresses there are tables or signs explaining the history of them on your photos. Are they only in English for tourists, or are they also in the language of the country?
In the language of the country.
Yes.
And
okay.
In both.
Okay. And the other point, what was very interesting was this Friedebourg and Fastenburg castles beside the big palace complexes. So they're really, court capitals of early modern time, founded in 18th century, the new manner, mixing a tradition of palace building of Indonesia with modern European fortification. It's fascinating. Do you know something about the engineers and the architects? Are there names who made the invention of these plans?
Unfortunately, don't. I was trying to find it, and
Yes.
also I asked about other researchers that working in the area, and there is no who was the architect. It's very hard to find. About Westernburg, I found in archive materials the name of the architect for
Yes.
Westernburg fort, but when you try to match his time of when he was there and the time of construction, it didn't match, although it's written that he was the designer. When I tried to match, it didn't came together, so it's very hard.
So perhaps he made the plans in the Netherlands, sending them to Indonesia, and wasn't at the place.
Maybe.
And the other interesting object was this Fort Belgica, what is really looking like a medieval castle or a Renaissance fortress palace, a palazzo in Fortezza. Why they built this high structures inside the bastionated walls? It's not a normal for colonial fortresses at that time. I think I wouldn't know anything comparable in the 17th century in perhaps the Western Hemisphere, in the Spanish Main or something, or then in the English colonies of Northern America at that time.
But we have it in Ukraine.
Yes, certainly, and also in Italy and important. Yes, I know. So this is an interesting point. It is like a reception of the idea of a palace fortress. But there was not a seat of a governor or something like that. It is only only a military complex.
Yes, and I don't know why.
Okay. Perhaps there should be a sign of power on the hillside.
Maybe, yeah.
Niels, please, you're.
Yes, so this was also a little bit of and again, I would stress I'm very unknowledgeable about this topic, but I was curious about the smallest fortresses, because there's a huge range in the size between these. Really, these large complexes where I imagine there must have been a significant garrison, and then who were in these very small fortresses, and again, sort of who were. I mean, looking at this general period, I mean, so of course we have the stately actors, the state, navy, army forces, but also the increasingly powerful merchants, and like we had the British Empire and the Dutch, etc. These small fortresses, which is almost like a fortified manor house or something like that, in scale at least. Who was residing there?
There was just a few, it was a very small garrison just to protect, just to show the power that we are here and it's our territory. They, as I read, they never built a lot inside, meaning that they cared just about the front, and the garrison was really very small because they just put a lot of, for example, in 16th century, there is in Ambon, you have next to Ambon, you have a fort, a Portuguese fort, and it's actually just like a tower, like a small tower.
Okay, so it's more like an outpost. They don't
Yes.
have any political authority or somewhat stationed there in a local scale. Okay, thank you.
I think it is comparable to that what the Dutch doing on the western coast of Africa. There are also many of the smaller forts, I think, at some places. Just a combination of a big fortress, a big fort, a fortified town, and at some points, also in the Caribbean, you have the small forts, or the Florida Keys, the Spanish made something like that. Are there more questions? Can't see them.
No questions from the chat.
Okay, I can't see anything else. So then we will close the lecture. It's quite okay. So we have to thank Olha for the presentation very much. It was very, very interesting, fascinating examples. I think we will do the next time all a big travel to Indonesia, looking to the forts of the Dutch and perhaps the Portuguese. It's warmer than here in Germany now. Winter time, Indonesia. I wish you all the best. Thank you to Aarhus University, to Niels and Rainer, and to Catherine for providing this lecture. And I wish you all a very nice time before Christmas and Christmas time then. It's not long to this point.
The same to you.
Bye.
Christmas time.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for accepting.
It was a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, yes.
It was a pleasure for me.
Have a
Bye.
nice evening, nice weekend. Thank you very much.
Bye.